Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. So we are Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. We were just discussing the concept of whether or not we're going to need 3 judges for halvaot or not. We said that at the end of the day, according to, I believe it was Rabbi Abahu, he says that you need 3 judges even for hodaot and halvaot. What would be the difference between the 3 judges of hodaot and halvaot and gzelot and chavalot? One would need mumchim, meaning gzelot and chavalot need mumchim. The hodaot and halvaot, they do not need mumchim. Okay, so we are 2, 4, 5 lines from the top. Ihachi. Okay, so we said at the end. Sorry, Mechila. When we ended off yesterday, we were saying that in reality, Rabbi Abahu admits that even for the hodaot and halvaot, you're gonna not need shlosha mumchim. However, the Chachamim, they came along and what did they say? They said that no, you do not need mumchim. Meaning from the Torah, you need shlosha mumchim. Why? Because we said iruv parashiot, the same way that we learned by shomer chinam, and then we also learned by halva'ah. We explained this yesterday. So the same concept is going to apply over here also by hodaot and halva'ot to gzelot and chavalot. And therefore, you're going to need also shlosha mumchim. However, Chachamim came along and they said that we don't need mumchim. Why? Because we want it to be easy for people to lend money. If it's going to be so complicated for them to lend money, they're going to stop lending money, and then that's not exactly what they want. So Chachamim were lenient in this case, and they said that he doesn't need to have mumchim. So he says the Gemara, Ihachi, if so, Talti Katani. There's 2 things that are written in the Mishnah. Dine mamonot bishlosha. Okay, dine mamonot, which is hodaot and halvaot, is bishlosha. Hedyotot gzelot bishlosha hedyotot. Sorry, dine mamonot bishlosha hedyotot. Okay, which is going to be like we said, hodaot and halvaot. Gzelot v'chavalot bishlosha mumchim, and then you're going to need shlosha mumchim. Ve'od, and another thing that it's written, another thing that they're asking. Shlosha lamani. Why do we have to break up the 2 cases with 3? Meaning, we said dine mamonot bishlosha, gzelot v'chavalot bishlosha. Why do we have to say bishlosha and then again bishlosha? Just say dine mamonot, gzelot v'chavalot bishlosha, and then we're going to be left with. And then we're going to understand the same. We're going to understand the same thing. Basically, according to Rabbi Abahu, that you're saying that what? That in reality it's all one deen, and then just Chachamim afterwards came along and were more lenient. So it should be enough. It should be enough to say everything in one shot. Ela amar Rava tarti katani mishum de Rabbi Chanina. So he says no. The reason why it's written too is because of Rabbi Chanina, which is what we just said previously, that Chachamim didn't want to stop people from lending, therefore they made it like this. Meaning, the Gemara basically asks the question, like it should say 2, right? And Rava says, you're right, technically it should, but they broke it up in 2 because of the concept of Rabbi Chanina, that we were afraid of lenders and borrowers. Okay? Rav Acha bered Rav Ika Amar mideoraita chad nami kasher. So he's going to present another opinion. We just said that Rabbi Abahu said you need 3, and he's going to come and say for hodaot and halvaot you only need 1. 1 is going to be enough. Shneimar betzedek tishpot amitecha, because it says in the pasuk betzedek tishpot you, meaning individual, you shall judge. Amitecha, your friend. So we see that it's 1 is sufficient. Ela mishum yoshvei keranot, that we were afraid that what's going to happen? People are going to go to the most to random people that aren't going to know any sort of halacha, right? And because we're afraid that you're going to fall on someone that doesn't know anything, therefore we said that you need 3.
What's Yoshvei Keranot?
Yoshvei Keranot, the people that are sitting in the corners. Now, the corners just basically means regular people that are sitting around doing nothing. So it says the Gemara, Atu bitlata milhavu yoshvei karanot. So what? When you have three people, you're not going to have the problem of people sitting in the corners, meaning you're not going to have the possibility of them being ignorant. Says the Gemara, if you're going to obligate me to take three people, the chances of at least one of them not like knowing, the chances that one of them won't know is very slim. Meaning, when you take three people, at least one of them will know something. Yeah. So it should be okay. Okay? So says the Gemara, if so, ta'u lo yishnemu. If we're so worried about this thing, meaning we say that if you go to one, if you take only one, we're afraid that what? That he's not going to be knowledgeable. So says the Gemara, it sounds like that if they make a mistake, they shouldn't have to pay. Meaning, normally speaking, if the judge, normally speaking, if the judge makes a mistake, he has to pay from his own pocket. Unless it's bedin mumche. Meaning, if it's bedin mumche, you don't have to pay from your own pocket. Why? Because the Torah gave the power to the bedin to take money from one person to give it to another person. So bedin has the power, even if they make a mistake, quote unquote, to take the money away from the person and give it to the other person.
So that means if it's a bedin mumche, we wouldn't consider that it's a mistake.
Maybe, yeah.
But there's a small percent chance the judge is gonna have to pay from out of his pocket, because if a judge makes a mistake, it's already okay, he made a mistake. That's not common, and then it could be within.
So that's exactly what we're saying. We're saying that
5% chance.
We're saying that based on the fact that mumche doesn't have to pay, maybe even in this case where it's going to be bedin shel hedyotot or yoshvei keranot, like we said right over here, maybe they shouldn't also have to pay. So says the Gemara, no. Kol sheken denefishi yoshvei keranot. Okay? On the contrary, says that if you're gonna make them, if you're gonna absolve them of all responsibility, the not mumchim,
okay,
then what's gonna happen?
They're gonna do whatever.
Exactly, it's gonna be free for all. Okay.
At the same time, you would assume that you're gonna be more strict on the mumchim.
No. Again, the mumchim, in order for them to be mumchim, it takes a lot. Right? In order for a person to be considered part of a bedin mumche, it's a lot of learning. Take, for example, nowadays, it's about 10 years to study for dayanut.
Does the concept still exist of a bedin mumche?
No. Nowadays, it's not. Nowadays, it's not the real one.
If the guy studied for 10 years in order to be mumche in that particular topic, and he makes a mistake, you would assume that then he would have to pay even more than the guy who's not mumche and who does a mistake because he's not mumche.
No, so on the contrary, says the Gemara that if you absolve the non-mumchim of responsibility, what's going to happen? They're never going to want to learn. They're never going to make an effort to find out halachot. They're never going to make they're going to say, anyways, we're not responsible. What do we care? Mm-hmm. So now, if you make them responsible, they're going to start, being a little bit careful, and not everybody's going to jump to be a dayan in this type of case, because they say, if they do something wrong, there's a problem, and we at the end of the day we don't want it to be a free for all. So if you give them responsibility, it's going to give them also responsibility to learn. Okay, says the Gemara, Ma ika ben Rava le Rav Acha berei de Rav Ika. What difference is there between Rava and Rav Acha berei de Rav Ika? Ika ben Ayu de Amar Shmuel. Shnaim shedanu dinehem din. So first of all, before we do that, so what comes out the difference between Rabbi Abahu and Rav Acha berei de Rav Ika? It's very simple. According to Rabbi Abahu, he says originally you need 3, and Chachamim were lenient and said that you don't need mumchim. But from the Torah you need 3. And Chachamim were lenient, and they said that you don't need mumchim. According
for
Rav Acha Berai de Ravika says on the contrary, no. According to the Torah, you only need one, and the Chachamim were machmir, and they said that you need three. Okay, because of Yoshvei Keranot, we want there to be at least one person that's learned it inside.
One because of Tishpot, but then the Chachamim said because of the Yoshvei Keranot you need three.
That's Rav Acha Berai de Ravika.
But they don't need to be mumchim.
Exactly. So now the Gemara asks, what's the real difference between Rava's answer that we said before and Rav Acha Berai de Ravika? So he said that the difference is going to be with a halakha that Shmuel said that what? That if you have two people that were dayanim, meaning you didn't have three, you only had two, is their judgment going to be a real judgment or not a judgment? What does that mean? That means instead of having three part of the Beit Din, you have only two of the Beit Din. Now everyone agrees that you're not supposed to have that. The question is, will it work or will it not work?
Maybe you can have just one and you say, okay, we go with the Tishpot.
Also, okay.
But two doesn't work for sure.
No, not really. Not really. We'll see. So he says over here, Shnaim shedanu dinehen din ela shenikhu bedin chatzuf lerava let leder Shmuel lerav acha berei de Rav Ika it leder Shmuel. So Shmuel says that if you have two people that were a bedin, okay, you have two people that were a bedin.
Din.
You have two people who were bedin. So Shmuel said that it's okay, the din is a din, but it's going to be called bedin chatzuf. Why is it bedin chatzuf? Because Chachamim said that you need three. So if they did it with two, they're chatzufim. They're going against the gzera of Chachamim. So
how can the din be din?
What? Because that's what we just saw. That Rav Acha Berai de Ravika said that mina Torah one is enough.
Yeah, but one is an odd number. Two is a.
Yeah, but two is two. With two, you at least you make sure that probably one of the two is also going to be learned.
The problem is if you end up with 50-50, then you're stuck. You didn't have
yeah.
Did you call another one in?
Let's see. I want to see if there's a Rashi or Tosfot on this. Okay. Again, so again, they don't really talk about it here, but it seems like Shmuel, right? He said his halacha in regards to two people, had nothing to do with Rabbi Abau, Rav Acha Berai de Ravika. Okay, so he just said his halacha not in regards to what we were learning over here, but in general. He said if there were two people that did the deen, it's going to be okay. So based on what Rav Acha bar Rav Ika is saying, that's gonna fit with Shmuel. Why? Because he says even one is sufficient.
Shmuel claims that you don't need three.
And Shmuel says you don't. If you have two, it's gonna be it's gonna be okay. It's not okay, but it works. Okay, so that's going to be the difference. That's going to be the difference between the two, Be'ezrat Hashem. And le'alacha nowadays, what happens? In le'alacha nowadays, we have a concept where if the two parties accept upon themselves a dayan yachid, then it also works. Okay, so that means normally yes, you need 3, and you're going to always need 3. However, if both parties agree to a single dayan, and whatever the dayan says, they accept. Again, before the judgment, they say whatever you say, we're okay with. So whenever that happens, then it's okay. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to explain the next part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says nezek v'chatzi nezek. If there's nezek or chatzi nezek, he pays what? He pays again. Mechila. If there's 100% damage that he has to pay, or 50% damage that he has to pay, it needs to be judged by 3. Right? Says the Gemara, nezek hainu chavalot. Damage is the same thing like chavalot. Right? It's the same thing like bodily damage. So why do you have to say it? Says the Gemara, mishum dekabai lemitna chatzi nezek. Taninami nezek shalem. Since we had to say afterwards chatzi nezek, which is 50% damages, so therefore we also needed to say the full damages. Says the Gemara, chatzi nezek nami hainu chavalot. Says the Gemara, but even the 50% is also part of damages. So what do I care? Okay. So says the Gemara, Tana mamona v'katani knasa. So he says no, because there's two possibilities of looking at the concept of chatzi nezek. Okay, first of all, when do we pay chatzi nezek? Chatzi nezek is if, let's say, again, this is bringing us back to the case of bava kama. There's an ox that gores another ox, right? If it's a shol tam, what does that mean? If it's an ox that something like this never happened to it before, it's not usual for it to happen. So then it's only going to pay 50% damages. Why? Because it's not normal for it to happen. So it's not something that you should have really paid attention to. Therefore, the halacha says you only pay half of the damage. But on the other hand, if it's already 3 times, it's going to be mu'ad. If it already gored 3 times different oxes, so then it's going to have to pay the full damages, nezek shalem. So this concept of paying chatzi nezek, this concept of paying 50% of the damages, is this a lower sentence that they gave him? Meaning, normally he should pay 100%, and Chachamim said, okay, because you weren't able to watch it properly, you're only going to pay 50. Or was it a fine that they gave him? Meaning that normally he shouldn't have to pay anything, and Chachamim made him pay 50% of a fine of it. Okay, so if you're going to tell me that the concept of chatzi nezek is a fine, so now it makes perfect sense why our Mishnah would say chatzi nezek as its own category. Why? Because everything that we mentioned till now was monetary, was you owe, this is what you have to pay. And now if you're saying that chatzi nezek is a fine, it's something new that you're adding on. And if it's something new that you're adding on, so this once you're saying chatzi nezek, you can say already nezek shalem. But says the Gemara, Hani chaleman da'amar palga nizka knasa. Okay, ela lemanda amar palga nizka mamona. But if you're going to say that the 50% that he has to pay is a monetary payment compensation, what are you going to say? It's the same thing as the regular nezek. Says the Gemara, ela idi deka ba'i lemitna tashlume kefel v'tashlume 4 ו5. Okay, demamon she'eno mishtalem b'rosh hu tananami chatzi nezek demamon she'eno mishtalem b'rosh hu. Okay, so he says, because right after the concept of nezek, the nezek and chatzi nezek, what do we have? We have tashlume kefel 4 ו5, which means what? Tashlume kefel is if a person steals and he denies having stolen, and then in court he is proven wrong. in court, because if he admits, he's not going to have to pay. In court, he's proven wrong. He has to pay double whatever he stole. Okay, that's kefil. What's arba'a v'chamisha? If he stole a sheep or an ox and he slaughtered it or sold it, then he has to pay for a sheep 4 times the amount of whatever the sheep was worth, and for an ox he has to pay 5 times the amount that it was worth. Then he's gonna have to pay it somehow.
You don't have it.
So then he might be sold as an eved ivri in that case. Okay, so these payments of kefel, arba'a v'chamisha, are not payments that are owed from the beginning. Right? Why are they not owed from the beginning?
You need to prove him.
Because it needs to be done in bedin with the kefel, with the disproving him, and for the arba'a v'chamisha, he needs to slaughter it, or sell it in order to be chayav. So these are not payments that come from the beginning. Okay, they're not payments they're not the initial payments that are made. So the same thing with chatzi nezek. Chatzi nezek is not the initial payment, meaning he's not paying the principal here. He's paying a different amount than the principal. So the same way that by kefel and arba'a v'chamisha you're paying a different amount of the principal, so too you're going to have to pay a different amount of the principal for the chatzi nezek. And once you say chatzi nezek, you already can include the nezek shalem. Okay, so he says v'idi dikabai lemitni chatzi nezek tani inami nezek. So once we have to do the chatzi nezek, we also add on the nezek shalem. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.